Hello, and welcome to what I hope will be the first of many podcasts that'll be detailing my work in developing the campaign setting for what I'm calling the City of Rainfall. It's going to be a campaign setting for Dungeons and Dragons, focusing on 5th edition, and I'm hoping to keep these in kind of a podcast style, where I can just talk about the project. I can, show you my passion and my ideas and what I've got going. A lot of this for right now is mostly because I don't have a lot of art to go along with this. I don't have very much to show per se. A lot of what I have is in the form of writing, so I can talk to you about this kind of stuff. And I want to keep it more casual and just be able to talk through kind of what I'm working on and what I'm doing. And hopefully, having a podcast like this coming out regularly, it'll keep me motivated to stay on track and keep working on what I'm doing. Um, Now, what is Rainfall? That's going to be the main topic of this first episode, an intro to Rainfall, if you will. Um, so I read a lot of books. I absolutely love reading, and I love any kind of a story, whether it be a true story like history or whether it be fiction. And I've read a lot of different books, and the ones that really have stuck with me and have really inspired me are the works of the horror author H.P. Lovecraft. Um, I absolutely love all of his mystery and crazy occult everything surrounding what he worked on. Great stuff. It's really inspired me, and it was kind of a jumping off point for here in Rainfall. And the idea that I came up with, and that I've kind of ran with going with all of this is, okay, what's the worst case scenario for Lovecraft's writing? What is the absolute worst thing that could come out of any of his stuff? Because a lot of his writing is very small scale, focuses on a few people and their crazed interactions with these various otherworldly entities and such things. So what happens if we hit the worst case, where these things decide that we should be no more, that for some reason, something that we can't understand, some whatever reason they're thinking, that we need to be destroyed. So this is what Rainfall is. These creatures, these otherworldly Lovecraftian entities have come to Rainfall specifically, Earth in general, however, and they have caused the end of the world, the apocalypse. And now they're gone. So what happens afterwards is it's about rebuilding the world. It's about a world that's been wiped back in technology back to medieval times is where they've rebuilt themselves to. And now we can kind of look at, okay, how do they interact with both the occult magics that have been left around by these creatures and their spawn, as well as how do they interact with the technology that's been left over from days before, and how do they progress through basically a destroyed world. Uh, so what I'm going to do now, I have a little bit of a passage talking about this brief history of Rainfall. I thought it's something of a an introduction, if you will, just something to kind of set the mood. I don't plan on doing this too often, on giving passages of actual writing, and of course this is a rough draft, but this is just kind of something to set the mood and give you kind of an idea of the themes and what's going on in this setting. So, after years of searching for life beyond our world, humanity finally found proof, a signal from the depths of space that couldn't come from anything else but intelligent life. The discovery of this signal kicked off a worldwide scientific effort to send a response and initiate first contact. Renewed interest in space exploration spurred on the launch of many new satellites and missions to the moon. All across the world, scientists and engineers rushed to create the crafts which would one day carry us to meet the life that we just only met. Yet that day would never come. They arrived without warning. Massive entities, things one might struggle to call a creature at all. They descended on our world. Most got off easy. Their minds couldn't handle the formless masses of terror that had come, and they were driven to madness. Many more were killed in the ensuing invasion, as these entities and their aberrant minions swarmed across our world. Those who survived were either rounded up and used for genetic experiments, or fled into the furthest corners of the earth to hide from everything. These creatures ruled the world for uncountable years, until, just as suddenly as they had arrived, they left. What life remained in the world slowly crept back to the surface to reclaim its ruins. Now those who still live struggle to rebuild the world from nothing, and to survive against what horrors are still left behind. So, I think that was a nice little piece to set the atmosphere, set the tone of kind of what's going on in Rainfall. And now you might be wondering why I keep saying Rainfall. Why is the setting called Rainfall? Well, it's because it all centers around a ruined city that is named Rainfall. And Rainfall itself was a center for scientific experiments and engineering that was focused on sending these crafts and these satellites out into space to help with this effort to send this signal out and to get missions that could involve with extraterrestrial life. So it was kind of a centerpiece for this effort to contact these creatures that would eventually destroy our world. And so now you're left with all of this ruin. What's left in it? What kind of creatures still prowl? What are people doing to rebuild the world inside of these ruins and outside of them in the regions just beyond? Now the general area kind of around Rainfall, the city itself is on a peninsula. It's kind of vaguely inspired by East Coast U.S. cities like Boston and New York. But the main idea is that this city is destroyed, and all of these other creatures that have come up, either from the experimentations of these invaders or people who may have survived the apocalypse, these people now live in the surrounding regions, and they're here to try and rebuild what they once had and bring some semblance of life back to the world. In terms of technologies in the world, we see a lot of everything has kind of fallen apart. Computers, obviously, they're not working. There's no electric grid to provide any sort of power to anything. So a lot of this big, fancy technology is just kind of unknowable to these people who are still alive in the world. And to them, technology has been wiped back to the Stone Age, and they've just barely managed to scrape it back to a sort of a medieval level of technology. That's their view of modern, and what they see as the technology from the world before the apocalypse. They can see this as it's essentially magic to them, and that's how I treat it in this setting, is as a form of magic, and it's calling out old world magic. And this is essentially all of these wonders of technology that they have found out some minuscule way to access what they could do, and to them it's just another form of magic. It's just as magic as the occult, dark magics that these entities sort of came with and that people have learned to harness, and is a much more traditional form of magic. But it's also horribly dangerous. People don't trust it. It's the stuff that destroyed the world. It's the stuff that they brought with them and that their minions still use. And so it's this sort of taboo, horrible subject. But going on, sort of my ending remarks in this intro are that this is all going to be working within the framework of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It's the system that I have a lot of experience with, and it's a very modern system. It's a system a lot of people use. Of course, because it's my own setting, it's all completely different than sort of any other thing. Traditional fantasy kind of races don't really work here. So I've created my own slew of races, which I want to expand upon in future podcasts and I want to talk about. I've also changed up a little bit of the way some of the classes work. It doesn't make sense for some classes to have magic anymore because of the way I've structured magic being between the old world magic and the kind of the magic of these entities as well. And so some classes that did have magic now don't. Some classes that were in normal 5th edition don't exist in this setting. And I've also added a new class that works more fittingly and thematically into this than the other kind of classes would have that were sort of taken out. And of course, just like the races, I do want to talk about these in future podcasts. So that's about all I have to talk about for today. Going into the future of this, I hope to put one of these videos out every Monday and Friday, so that'll be twice a week, 2 videos per week. And of course, they'll be just like this, sort of an unscripted podcast style. I'll try not to get too off topic as I talk about these things. I give myself a little outline of what I want to talk about, and just kind of talk with you and put my ideas out there and see what you think. So that's everything I got. If you like this video, please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And be on the lookout for future videos. Thank you very much.